Alright, list time. This time, Disney. Specifically their animated feature canon. There's over 50, some are bound to be underrated, so let's do this. In order of release, here we go. Number 1, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Whittling this list down to 10 was not at all easy. Despite a total of 57 features released to date, a good chunk of those get a lot less attention than about 20 or so features. Ultimately, I had to make sure whatever I picked wasn't ignored because they were not so good. So kicking this list off is The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, a compilation film made up of 2 shorts. While the compilation era is often overlooked by Disney fans, my choices were easy here. This or the Three Caballeros. And I went with this because Three Caballeros is at least a well-known origin for Donald and his 2 friends. Granted, the Mr. Toad short is the basis of a fun Disneyland ride, but it feels like as the more time goes by, the less I see people acknowledge this or the Sleepy Hollow portion of the film. Outside of those who've seen it, of course. It's certainly on the more recognizable side of films here, but given the quality and the lack of attention it tends to get despite a popular ride attached to it, I felt it fits. Number 2, The Fox and the Hound. Skipping a few decades, let's talk about an unlikely friendship. The Fox and the Hound. While I regularly see this movie brought up for saddest Disney scene list, I feel like it never gets much credit for having one of the most mature endings in a Disney feature. I won't spoil it, but let's say it's happy while acknowledging the grim reality of whether or not a fox and a hound can be friends. Wait, am I spoiling it by saying that? Along with its ending, the movie's third act features an incredible piece of animation where a bear fights the leads, which ranks up there with some of the best fights in Disney animation, so it definitely needs some more attention. Number 3, The Great Mouse Detective. And now for what I consider to be the most underrated Disney movie, The Great Mouse Detective. It's a movie about a detective mouse, not that one, who goes up against an evil rat played by Vincent Price.
Thank you. But it hasn't all been champagne and caviar.
I love this movie. Among the directors is John Musker and Ron Clements, who would go on to do more Disney movies you love. But for whatever reason, I never see this one get the love it deserves. It's even credited to be the first Disney film to use CG for an entire sequence. So not only is it good, it's got a lot of history to it. While it wasn't the biggest box office success, it did do well enough, so that it never gets brought up as one of the better Disney films of the 80s is beyond me. It's fun, well animated, and unique among their work. I've heard rumors that it's getting a remake, which troubles me, but hey, if it means more people will discover this classic, I might forgive it. Number 4, The Rescuers Down Under. The original Rescuers is fairly well beloved. The sequel, not so much. Which is a shame as it's the rare sequel that Walt Disney Animation actually made. Not Disney Toon. The actual studio. I can't say it's quite as memorable as the original, so I get in part why it's considered lesser, but that it never seems to get any love is disappointing to me. This was released between The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, yet it is often ignored by fans of the Disney Renaissance. Some have even thought of not considering it a part of the Renaissance, despite that skipping this ignores how timelines work. It's a real shame, as the animation is amazing, and it was the first film to utilize the cap system at Disney. Honestly, I'm just sad that a good Disney sequel has to be treated as if it's no big deal. Number 5, Hercules. Maybe I'm biased here as this was the first movie I saw in the theater, but I feel Hercules gets a lot more hate than it deserves half the time. While praise has certainly been thrown at Hades, and yes, of course, the movie has its fans, I still think people don't give it enough credit for being one of the funniest Disney animated features. And that art style is just stunning at times. I'll keep this one at that because like I've said, I've seen some recognition, but a lot of it is negative, and the positive is largely on one aspect. Number 6, Fantasia 2000. If I had to pin down my favorite animated feature from Disney, it's definitely the original Fantasia. It's beautiful, the animation is great, it's a bit risky to see near silent features, especially with sound, so it's always been one I've loved. The sequel is often trashed or ignored, which is a shame because it mostly works. I've seen people trash the celebrity intros, which I kinda get, but I love the idea of different people introducing the subjects. I've seen people trash the shorts, saying that they don't stack up to the originals, but I did love the differing styles, and with the exception of the Flamingo short, which I find okay, I think the shorts are on par with the original. My only real complaint for this is that it is too short. At just 73 minutes compared to the original's 2-hour run, I feel like it was practically rushed out. Still, that it's often trashed and never kicked off the series of films that even the original wanted to do is disappointing. And in that regard, it feels underrated. Number 7. Atlantis. What do you get when Hellboy creator Mike Mignola works on a Disney feature? Atlantis. And honestly, it's a shame that a lot of people skipped out on this one. Maybe it was the marketing. I remember thinking it looked awful back when it was hitting theaters, but upon seeing it years later, I instantly regretted it. While the movie certainly has its weak points with the villains, the cast of characters we get are great. And it's one of the few Disney movies I wouldn't mind seeing a remake towards, if only because they could fix the villain problem while giving it the audience it deserves. I've heard it's a ripoff. I'm not sure how much of that is true, so I won't comment on it much. What I can say is that if it is a ripoff, in the same way people say The Lion King is a ripoff to Kimba, it's probably no big deal. Though again, I wouldn't know. I just know Atlantis is entertaining and deserves more of an audience than it gets. Number 8, Meet the Robinsons. The first movie after the Pixar buyout is honestly a lot better than its forgettable reputation suggests. While I often see Bolt considered as the start of what's being called a Disney revival, I feel like Meet the Robinsons should be considered as the start, as it has more heart than some of the other 2000s releases. By the way, Bolt isn't on this list. Sure, it's ignored quite a bit, but at least it gets its due as the start of an era. Either way, it's a charming tale about learning from your mistakes, with one of the most touching finales in Disney history. We even get a touching message in the end from a certain figure from the company. Spoilers? The bowler hat guy is a fun villain, definitely one of the best we've seen in the 2000s onward from Disney, so I'm not sure why this doesn't get the love it deserves. Is it because Chicken Little preceded this and that's one of the worst? Number 9, The Princess and the Frog. In 2009, 2D animation returned in a big way, and no one went to see it. I mean, I did multiple times, but it did so bad that 2D animation returned only to die again. That's horrible, especially considering that The Princess and the Frog is better than at least half the Disney Renaissance features. Yeah, I said it. I know a lot of people said it was nothing compared to 90s Disney, but I disagree. Years later, it still gets props for being one of the final big budget 2D animated features, but it so often gets dragged as lesser than the Renaissance features that I just had to include it here. The music is great, Tiana is one of my favorite Disney princesses, and Dr. Facilier is one of the best Disney villains in recent memory. 10 years later, and I still can't believe so many people skipped out on this. Sure, Avatar also hit theaters at the time, but come on! Number 10, Winnie the Pooh. And finally, our 10th underrated film, Winnie the Pooh. No, not that one, the 2011 one, which is the final 2D animated film to date from Disney. This opened against the last Harry Potter film with little to no marketing, and I've heard rumors that it was because he wanted to kill 2D officially. I'm not sure how true that is, but considering it's a conspiracy rumor, I'll give it little weight. What I can say is that it likely happened because this was a smaller budget film and the last 2D film didn't do so well. So, why put the effort then though? It's sad. But I'm glad the final 2D animated feature was an incredibly cute one. People often use the phrase, they don't make them like they used to, which 2011 Pooh seems proof against that. It's cute, features no pop culture reference humor, is largely made up of voice actors, runs at barely an hour long because it didn't need more, and it's 2D, just as I wish more Disney films would be now. Most never saw it, but now's your chance to catch up. And those were the 10 films I consider to be Disney's most underrated. Do you agree? Disagree? Feel free to comment. Support me on Patreon, and I'll be back next week. See ya.
Searched by the sun and the light of the moon, and if everything goes well, we'll be back soon.
Back soon.
Back soon.